Good morning and welcome to today's webinar on Electude electric drive and CCAR. We've got just a few people still logging in, so we're just going to let those folks log in before we start. We'll give it another 30 seconds here or so. Looks like we've got at least 3 logged in online with us here this morning, so great to have you here with us. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. So my name is Darcy Wadle, customer support at Electude, and joining me here today is Bob McGinn from CCAR. So there's good looking Bob there, and we're here to kind of share with you some a new instructor course that we got in partnership with our good friends at CCAR. So I'm just going to turn this over to Bob, and he's going to talk a little bit about the relationship and the course that our friends there at CCAR put together, and then he'll kick it back over to me, and I'll show you some of the Electude stuff.
Darcy, did you want to start and talk about Electude philosophy?
Oh, well, sure, I can do that. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, for those that are on the call that are not as familiar with Electude, so what we do is we call learn by doing through a discovery-based approach. So instead of a text or video, we utilize interactive animations to allow students to learn through a process we call guided self-discovery. So if you think about how a young person learns how to play a video game, they don't necessarily read through the manual and they just grab the controls and they learn how things work through a process of trial and error. So we try to do that in our lesson modules where students can kind of explore and mess around and learn through that same process. And then what we've done, of course, we use these realistic animations. So here you see a diesel engine up there with a turbo and all that. So we use these interactive animations where students can learn through this guided self-discovery method. And we feel that these types of activities where they can interact with the animations and answer questions as they go, it tends to engage learners on a much higher level. So we kind of call this the gamification of learning. So if you think about how a video game is designed, that they experiment, they make mistakes, and they learn through that process of trial and error. And that is a really good way of learning, but it's often a very dangerous way to learn out in the shop. So Electude is not meant to replace what you do with your students out in the shop, but they can learn the theory through this process of trial and error in a safe environment where they're not going to break stuff or hurt themselves, especially with electric vehicles. You don't want to be experimenting out there in the lab with high voltage. So it's much better to get some of that experimentation out of the way in an e-learning platform where if they make a mistake and get some wires crossed, they're not frying a high-dollar piece of equipment or putting themselves in danger. So that's kind of what we do best at Electude is we teach theory lessons. And so our electric drive content, it's got over 100 lesson modules, and those will be, formative lessons with summative quizzes, which I'll show you here in a little bit. And then we've also got an ebook as well that goes along with it, where students can read an ebook to give a student like a reading experience along with the interactive lessons. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the interactive lessons with an ebook. As far as our curriculum goes for electric drive, it covers the items there you see highlighted there: CVT, high voltage, etc. So we kind of cover, hybrid electric vehicles from bumper to bumper.
Okay, Darcy, I'm going to stop the share if you're ready to open a electric drive section.
Yeah, give me just a second here and I'll get that all booted up here. Oh, and by the way, for those of you that are participating online, there is a chat feature in there where you can ask questions. So Bob and I will kind of pause at the end of our presentation. We'll answer any questions that you have regarding the product and relationship that we have with CCAR. So let me share my screen now. All right, so you should, Bob, can you confirm you're seeing my screen?
Yes,
All right, very good. All right, so I'm going to show you kind of a student. I'm showing it from the student view. It's just a lot easier, I think, to get the basic concept of how this is laid out versus the teacher view, which is similar, but for the purpose of today's demonstration, we're just going to go in as a student. And I got it set to explore mode, so I can kind of jump around and go wherever I want. Let's take a look here just at working on hybrid vehicles, just to give you an idea of how our lessons and stuff are laid out. So let's click on disconnecting HV system from a power supply using the service plug. So in Electude, there's always going to be some sort of interactive animation or graphic here to the left, although this lesson starts with kind of a static image, but here it's talking about disconnecting the system. You got a trouble code, you got to diagnose. So it kind of gives the student a scenario. They answer some questions as they go along the way. So they looking at the scan tool, they can answer some questions here. And as they go through this, what's going to happen is they're going to disconnect the service plug on the car. So we got to do that. It's one of the first things we have to do. Oh, actually, first thing you need to do is consult the service information, as Bob would agree with, right, Bob? We got to check that service information. And then we're gonna disconnect the battery. So we have to disconnect the battery and check our voltages and things like that. Make sure we're using a Cat 3 meter. What is the voltage here on this? So of course, this is we're on the low voltage battery here, but we're just kind of checking our meter. Make sure that it works, testing it on a low voltage battery, 12.4. It's really asking me to pretty specific here. There we go. So now we can assume the voltmeter is working properly. That's always important whenever you're working on a hybrid vehicle. We're going to slip on our gloves, and you notice we got the protectors on there. How do you check whether the gloves are still okay? Obviously, you want to send these in every so often to get them professionally tested, but in between those times, you can filling them with air and listening for leaks. Kind of gives you some additional feedback there. And we're going to shut the car off. What else are we going to do here? Then disconnect the battery, of course. 12-volt battery. Slip on our gloves. And then we got here we're kind of using kind of a Toyota style plug here. Typically, first we disconnect the assurance lock. And then the next step, click on the lock itself, pull it down. And then pull it out. So here you can this is a good example of the discovery-based learning, learn by doing, not meant to replace what you would do with your students out in the lab, but as you can see, a good way to practice those activities and things like that. I'll show you maybe one more area here, just the benefits of an online learning system like this. If we go to components, let's look at Resolver. This is one of my favorite lessons. So we're going to learn how this Resolver works. Just really quickly, I'm going to jump over here to a page. I can recall my days as a teacher having to draw images on the board and things like that. And if you were trying to explain how this Resolver worked through a book or through a video, it's a very complicated device where you have an input coil and an output coil. Basically, it's a bunch of little transformers all around. These are all little transformers here. And if we jump back to here, and we have an input coil and an output coil. And then if we would take a hacksaw blade and cut through this iron core, you can see that makes that magnetic field less permeable. And depending on what that air gap is, you can see that affects the output voltage there of the transformer. So imagine now we put a rotor in there, and this is how that device works. So when the lobes there are closer, we get the input and the output are about the same, but as we increase the air gap, you can see what that does on the output there. And so with electric drive, it's a totally different animal than working on a combustion engine. You can roll an engine into the classroom. You can put a wrench on the crankshaft and spin it, and students can understand how that engine works. But with electric drive, it's a different animal. A lot of abstract technology. So I think these animations do a fantastic job of showing for self-learning, for you, the teacher, or for your students. Animations are worth 1,000 words, I think. So that's just a little bit showing just how our content works. Typically, from a student view, when they land on a page like this, they would have to answer these questions in sequence correctly before they can advance to the next page. I've, of course, got this in Explore mode. So it's kind of like free play in a video game where you can kind of go around wherever you want to. But this is also the same experience from a teacher login. So that's a little bit about Electude, what we do. And like I said earlier, we got this fantastic partnerships with our friends at CCAR. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and kick this back to Bob. And he's going to tell you about this great course we have for teachers.
Thanks, Darcy. So moving on, let's see if we can get it. Okay. Let's start with just a little bit of background about who we are, the Coordinating Committee for Automotive Repair, which is a mouthful. So let's just agree to refer to us as CCAR. We are based in Chicago, and we were established in 1994 with startup money from the US EPA as a repository of environmental health, safety, and compliance information for the auto industry. We have been, excuse me, an OSHA Alliance partner since 2004 and an OSHA ambassador since 2020. And when you're an alliance partner, you are particular to a channel of industry. For better understanding of it, CCAR is the only partner in the automotive space with OSHA as far as the alliance or ambassador program goes. We currently provide hazmat training to the automakers and their dealer networks, and we have partnered with Electude to provide safety training to education since 2018, delivering our content on the Electude LCMS. So let's have a look at some of the events we've been watching. I have said to instructors at previous education conferences that before you get too comfortable thinking the shift to EV won't be happening here soon in North America, please consider some of these things, these bullet points. All three of the US automakers and the California Air Resources Board have announced major shifts in powertrains and regulations since January 2021. For me, the most glaring is Ford dropping big money into battery factories and plants with SK in Kentucky and Tennessee. As educators, you're probably aware that ASE is in development of a new EV standard for safety that started early last year. The new standard is expected to drop very soon and will likely cover general awareness or a level 0 for anybody in the school or in the repair shop in the dealership to use. But also through some back channels at recent conferences, we heard that may be delayed until the whole package is ready to be delivered. But ASE Ed Foundation President Mike Coley asked the training providers in a recent letter to the members of the Education Foundation that if any providers like Electude and CCAR have any available training for EV and EV safety, let us know what that is so that we could share that with the public. In 2022, across the summer conferences, I conducted some impromptu surveys as part of my EV presentation to teachers at the Ed conferences. And when it came to roadblocks, building a program, They said the number one impediment was that they themselves needed more training before moving forward, more training that would make them feel secure in the decision-making process that they would have. The other thing that was kind of shocking was that of all surveyed, nearly 1 in 7 said they had had no training thus far. That was last summer. Hopefully that's changed a little bit. So for our part, CCAR is offering access to a newly revised EV module for EV and battery electric vehicle safety, specifically for instructors. This module goes much deeper into essential safety protocols, along with how and why things happen to electric powertrain. And if it, just so we're clear, this is our offering of it from Electude. You're getting in this offering their entire electric drive package, 100 plus modules, the quizzes, everything. This is our offering part of it, which is going to issue a certificate. So for those of you that have seen the student version, it may of our content, it may appear to be identical at first glance, but once you dig in, you'll find more hazards and processes than most of your students need to know about. And with regard to our opinion about who should be exposed to the content, let's say that a post-secondary student or a third-year high school will probably understand our mindset. However, those of you teaching secondary freshmen, incoming newbies, you may scare them out of your program if you show them some of the content from this. So we would ask that you be thoughtful in your process of, do we expose students to this and when? Last thing we want to do is scare anybody out of somebody's program, especially in a technician shortage. For instructors taking the module and the accompanying post-test with a score of 80%, you'll receive a certificate from CCAR. So now we get down to details. CCAR will be administering access to this offering. It's opening to any of the following groups. If you're accredited secondary or post-sec teacher in a currently active automotive program, or a master agreement provider, as it's been explained to me, is the correct name for like a Lincoln Tech, a YO, or a UTI, or if you're adjuncts or a contractor to any of these organizations, or if you're a retired instructor, just wants to look at it, we're happy to have you. If you're outside of those cohorts, and typically that means if you're an automotive OEM service training instructor, contact me directly, because we need to have a discussion about why you want this and where you're going forward with it, because likely the OEMs already have all of this covered within their standard training for their staff. After completing registration, you'll head to the location at the bottom, CCAR instructor EV training.electude.com. You'll log in as a student. That link will bring you to here. This is what that page looks like. There's one more important detail that we have to discuss, though. I realize cost can be a barrier, especially with such an exorbitant sum. But here the photo shows the first ever recipient of the CCAR Electude Instructor of the Year, Sarah Heller of Raritan Valley Community College in Branchburg, New Jersey. 100% of the proceeds of this EV course will be applied to funding the 2023 award to be presented at the Board of Governors meeting, the ASE Board of Governors meeting in November of 2023. I don't know about you, but I think it's a great idea to provide you with a training opportunity and funding an award for a deserving instructor. So down to the brass tacks. To register, please call us at CCAR, 888-476-5465. Speak to one of our staff. Let them know that you're in for EV instructor training. For that, we will need to build a profile with your name, your email address, and as far as the email address goes, please consider whether or not your institution will block any emails from an outside provider that has a commercial tag on it, that they may not let it through the door. Maybe you want to use a private email. In any case, you won't be spammed by any of this, because we don't believe in that. We will have somebody contact you directly over the phone. We'll also need the name of the institution so that we have it for certificates, and a good contact phone number for you, along with your current status. Are you active, retired? Now you can send a check or pay by credit card. Once we have you on the roster, the system will send you a login credential. And as far as the system sending it specifically, that's me. So as we are adding people, I have been dropping people into the enrollment system. You'll be in an enrollment period of 1 year. Once you're registered, be on the lookout for an email from Electude LMS that looks similar to this. No reply at electude.org. If you have any difficulty where this got lost or perhaps deleted or corrupted and the login doesn't work, just call me directly. You'll have my info popping up here in a minute, and we'll be happy to straighten you out, assign you a new password, and get you back on the straight and narrow. Once you've activated the account to train, any questions or service issues should be directed to me. That's my number at 5465 extension 4, or send an email message to armagin@ccargreenline.org with a subject line of EV instructor training issue. If you have a current Electude subscription and Electude rep, please don't contact them about this, because they won't be able to help you with anything. They don't have access to this. This is strictly from a CCAR side of the fence. And with that, that completes the presentation portion. I would now open the floor up to questions.
Okay, I'm looking here for Bob. I somehow lost my panelist or attendees view of the chat. Can you see if there's any?
I can see 5 participants or 3 participants. I don't see any questions at the moment.
Okay.
I see a and the Q&A is there's something that just popped up in the chat.
Great. Yeah, if you could. I'm not sure why I lost that view. I'm still trying to work on it, but if you could, oh, here we go. Maybe this is it.
Alan
yeah.
is asking about can he have a copy of the slides? I'm certainly happy to pass this along once we've concluded the webinars, but we have these carrying out to at least March 6th and beyond. So let me talk to the powers that be to find out whether or not it's okay to share that, because I don't have the prerogative of letting that information out the door, but I'm happy to look into that and get back to you.
Yeah, this is being recorded, so we could probably send you the recording. I think that's being done, so
Right.
You should have the recording here in a day or two. So, do we have any other questions from the participants? All right. Okay, if there's no more questions, everybody that's online here today will get a copy of the recording. We'll see to that. And then if you have any questions, obviously, if you wish to register as a teacher for this course, we highly encourage you to do so. Just to reach out to the fine folks there at CCAR at 888-476-5465. And we will be hosting another webinar this evening at 5:30 Central Time. So if you wish to attend the second presentation, or you want to bring somebody else in on the call, you can definitely do so. So for now, Bob and I will be signing off. Thank you all for attending, and we hope to be visiting with you real soon.
I would add, Darcy, that anybody that contacts me, armagin@ccargreenlink.org, that needs an additional link for tonight's presentation, I'll be happy to get that forwarded to any interested parties here in the 11th hour.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Bob.
Okay. So with that, we will say good morning or good afternoon, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you all. Thank you.